Well, hi everyone. On Friday, I did a video about the landslide along the Chilcotin River in British Columbia, Canada. And like many of you, I've been extremely interested in getting updates because this landslide blocked a large area of this river, and now a reservoir is forming behind this landslide debris, and it's expected to overtop and erode out the landfill material and carry a lot of material, mud, water, other debris downstream. So I've got a couple of technical updates and a lot of new visuals I want to share with you. So here's an image of the landslide area prior to the slide. Here's an image afterwards. It's quite a large slide. So local officials have updated information on the size of this slide. They now say it's about 1,000 meters long, so over 3,000 feet. It's about 30 meters high, so about 100 feet high. So it's very, very large. In fact, those dimensions are almost double what was initially released in terms of the overall length. And a number of you commented on my first video that you didn't think that it was going to be a catastrophic release of water. And I've come around to that way of thinking as well. These materials that are part of the landslide debris now are described as being primarily sand, maybe some silts in there, but it's pretty clean, granular material. It's going to be highly erodible, but this is such a large slide area. It's going to take water some time to go over the top and then have sufficient flow to start eroding, in this case scouring out the debris, such that that would progress to the point where it might cause a catastrophic release of the water in this new reservoir that's being formed. But I doubt very much that's going to happen. The water in this new reservoir has been reported to be rising at a rate of around 22 centimeters per hour, so not quite 9 inches. So what's going to happen, since this is essentially a river valley and the side slopes slope away from the river, it's going to take more and more water by volume to produce the same rise in elevation height of this new reservoir. So I think the rise of this reservoir elevation is going to slow down, relatively speaking, but it could be that this slide debris gets overtopped in a few days or a week even. So I want to address a lot of the common themes relating to the comments on the first video. Some of you said that, hey, just leave this alone, let nature take its course. Of course, there's been human activity throughout this area and continues to be. There's been logging, from what I understand. There's irrigation going on. So the chances of people leaving this alone, I think, is pretty slim. But I think it's going to take some extraordinary efforts to clear this out if that's what people decide to do. I think there's going to be a reservoir behind this slide debris for a very long time. So let's look at some of the new pictures. These were taken on August 4th. You see a picture of the slide scarp. It's on the right bank of the Chilcotin River. You can see the water encroaching from upstream, starting to flow over the slide debris, moving downstream, covering a larger and larger area. But this slide debris surface certainly isn't even, and I wish they would release some elevation data. I'm curious how much more this water level has to rise in this reservoir for water to make it to the downstream face of this slide debris. But it's moving right along. So by the time it flows over the top and on the downstream face of the slide debris, I think the velocities are going to be quite low, and it's not going to lead to a lot of erosion of material, at least not right away. And I don't think there's going to be much water or debris passing down to the Fraser. This slide location is about 30 kilometers north of the confluence between the Chilcotin and Fraser rivers. So what is that? That's about 18 miles. And you can see this slide scarp. It's very clearly granular material. So initially this situation was described as being extremely dangerous. I wouldn't discount that, but I don't think it's as alarming as originally made out to be. Reminder of the location, a Google Earth image, a satellite image, and these are the warning areas, the warning and watch for floods. And of course, the yellow is mostly along the Fraser. But again, I don't think much is going to happen down there. These are the evacuation areas as of Friday, August 2nd. So as a reminder, I'm recording this video on the evening of Sunday, August 4th. So these updated images that I'm showing you in this video were taken earlier today, around midday. Some of you took issue with me using the term ecological disaster when describing this slide in the first video that I produced. And I see your point. I tend to use those terms, ecological and environmental, somewhat interchangeably. I now have since realized that ecological has become somewhat of a politically charged term in this part of Canada, maybe elsewhere. So ecological implies human involvement or human impacts, which I think there are, but I was mostly referring to the likely negative impacts to the salmon population. Also, too, this type of slide is nothing new, apparently. You could look at the photos and the other images for this Chilcotin River Valley, and there's abundant evidence of prior slides in terms of scarps, that is vertical offsets upslope, where the material below has slid downwards under the influence of gravity. Then you have material piling up at the base of these slide areas, and it's really hilly like a ski mogul. That's referred to as hummocky topography. Of course, you can have some of that from glacial features, but in this case, most if not all of these are from previous slides. This isn't from this area, but that's an extreme version of hummocky topography. Now, another reason why I think this is going to be a slow-moving event relative to any discharge of this reservoir water, this area, in terms of overall precipitation averages, is going to enter into a drier period. And until you get into October, of course, that's when the snow starts flying. So I think high flows will not, in all likelihood, occur along the Chilcotin River until late spring. So I think they need to monitor not only these active slide areas, but other potential slide areas along this river valley. They can use tools such as satellite-based LiDAR, plane-based LiDAR, drone-based LiDAR. These are all excellent tools, and I think it could go a long way to understand if other areas are likely to cut loose out here. Now, as I mentioned in the first video, I think the quote failure mechanism will be from overtopping, and I did some back of the envelope calculations. And if you assume that most of this slide debris is an unsaturated sand, which I suspect is the case, I think it could take many, many years for steady state seepage to establish itself throughout this debris section. And of course, that needs to happen before anything like internal erosion, piping as they refer to it, could occur and undermine this unintentional dam through internal erosion or piping. So what that means is if you have an exit gradient that's high enough to move soil particles, it'll move that soil particle on the downstream face, and then the very next particle in line gets moved and so on. So that type of internal failure progresses from downstream to upstream. But again, I don't think there's anywhere near sufficient time for that to occur here. I think overtopping, even if it took waiting till next spring, is by far the most likely scenario. Although near term, there's going to be water running over this thing. I don't know, again, whether the velocities are going to be high enough to produce any significant erosion and channel cutting into the slide debris. Now, addressing another common theme in the comments is that many of you want to go to the dry portion of the Chilcotin River and start looking for gold. And of course, they're recommending evacuations through that area, but I could understand why it would be very tempting. Now, I couldn't let this pass without mentioning it. The spokesperson for the government there in British Columbia, her title is British Columbia Emergency Management and Climate Readiness Minister. I've never heard of a climate readiness minister, but you go to their website and I mean, it looks to me like it's a mechanism to blame virtually everything on global warming. And when I saw that name, it just triggered an association with the Ministry of Silly Walks. And if you're not familiar with that bit, it's one of the funniest things I've seen in my life. So you should look for that on YouTube. Now, I said I'd mention where I got these fantastic images. These came from a new website. It's the Chilcotin River Landslide Information Portal. There's panoramas, there's photos, drone photos taken, and it looks like they're going to update these over several days. These drone photos are posted from the last few days. So not quite a live webcam, which would be fantastic. I know a number of people would like to see this water flow over the top and start going downstream in real time. But I think, I mean, they've really gone a long way to filling in the gaps, the information gaps that have been out there this weekend. In fact, at the very end of this video, after I roll credits, I'm going to show you some of the panorama footage from this website. So at this point, I'd like to send a shout out to the channel members. I really appreciate your ongoing support, as well as those of you who have provided super thanks. That really helps me do what I do. And also there's special perks associated with being a channel member, so you might want to check that out.